Hello everyone, Scoobyfoo here, and boy am I excited to talk into your ears about what we have in store today. Boots of the Assembler, also known as those boots with the little dude on them. Do you like how Sanguine Alchemy pauses your rift timer, but hate how you have to do anything to proc it? Do you look at your teammates that are 20 meters or more away from you and think, man, I really wish they had a 35% damage buff right now? Are you one of the 2 people on planet Earth who still use Lumina? If you answered yes to, I don't know, like 1 or 2 of those, then consider Boots of the Assembler. With their exotic perk, Blessing of Order, standing in a healing rift will create Noble Seekers that home in on allies that are not in a rift and heal them. Standing in an empowering rift will also create Noble Seekers that home in on allies, granting both you and them Blessing of the Sky. More about that later, it's a bit weird. As well, every time a Seeker finds an ally, the timer of your rift will be briefly paused. Alright, enough of that voice. Before anything else, let's cover some additional stuff that isn't exactly stated by the exotic perk. First off, you might have noticed, but it doesn't specify that it actually has to be your rift anywhere in the exotic, meaning that you can sit in, say, somebody else's healing rift, put your empowering rift down, and have both Seekers activate, along with extending the timers of both rifts to be nearly infinite. Well of Radiance, Schmell of Schmadiance, all you need are some rifts. For healing rifts, the Seekers that get sent out by them only provide burst healing, not constant regen like the rift itself. The Seekers do grant Benevolent Dawn if you're unwell, which you probably should be for these boots, and they'll add to the rift timer pause every time they hit someone. For empowering rifts, the Seekers grant Blessing of the Sky, which is a 35% damage buff in PvE and a 20% damage buff in PvP. The Seekers don't grant Benevolent Dawn for whatever reason, though people stepping in the rift itself will, as usual. And they also won't add to the rift timer pause if they hit a person who already has Blessing of the Sky. Speaking of that timer pause thing, healing someone or giving them Blessing of the Sky will pause the rift timer for 5 seconds, which can stack up to 10 seconds. A healing rift will be nearly infinite with only one other person in your fire team, and empowering rifts will be the same, so long as you have 2 or more people. We're not done with this perk yet, though. What it doesn't say is that on both healing and empowering rifts, noble rounds will spawn. Yes, those noble rounds. Meaning that these boots will synergize with Lumina, think like how Necrotic Grip synergizes with Thorn, by giving you free noble rounds to buff your teammates with. Final thing to note for these boots is that they're useless, I mean entirely useless in solo content. These boots were made for walk-in, but only with a team. The Seekers will do absolutely nothing without somebody else there. Ah, right, that weird thing I mentioned. The exotic perk states that the empowering Seekers grant both you and your ally a damage bonus, but it's lying. You won't receive any damage buff except from your own rift. It's possible to intercept the Seekers and get the buff if you leave the rift right after they spawn, but it's finicky and really not worth it since you'll end up losing the extended rift timer from leaving your rift. So, you got all that? Put your rift down, stand in it to buff or heal your teammates and extend your rift timer, has synergy with Lumina, and is useless solo. So, where should you be using these things? Everywhere. Override is prime for giving everyone the damage buff from your rift. Nightfalls will go quite smoothly with everyone dealing 35% more damage or receiving fairly consistent heals. Iron Banner or other 6v6 modes in PvP will mysteriously be going very well if you manage to buff your teammates enough, and even in trials you can pop a rift to give your 2 teammates some extra damage to win their next fight. As for Gambit, it's probably good for the ad waves. I never tested it, but it'll definitely be good for killing the Primeval if you don't have something like a Bubble Titan to give people a damage buff already. So, what should you wear with these then? PvE first. Obviously, you're going to want high recovery, with Discipline being your second focused stat. As for subclasses, you've got options actually. Well of Radiance is your obvious choice, giving you the ability regen if others make use of your rift or other abilities, but this exotic does technically work on all subclasses, meaning that if you need something like, say, a Stasis Warlock to help control the field, you can still make use of every other part of Boots of the Assembler, though for the purposes of this build, I'll be using Well of Radiance with Empowering Rift and Fusion Grenades selected. As for weapons, I mentioned you can use Lumina with this to good effect thanks to the free noble rounds from your rifts, but aside from that, I've been having fun with Hawkmoon, Deathbringer, really just whatever I've wanted or needed to use for the encounter. But of course, you'll want to use weapons that fit with the armor mods you're using as always. For armor pieces, you'll need 1 Void piece, 1 Solar Bond specifically, 2 pieces that can be any element, and 1 that'll depend on what you want to do. Combat mods will be Protective Light, which gives damage resistance when you're at low health in exchange for Charged with Light stacks. That'll go on your Void piece. One of the new Elemental Well mods, Well of Life, to give you a slow, constant regen after picking up a well. That'll go on your Solar Bond. And on your other 2 pieces, which again can be any element, you'll have Taking Charge to give you Charged with Light stacks when you pick up an Orb of Power to fuel Protective Light, and Elemental Ordnance to create an Elemental Well when you get a grenade kill. Now, your final mod can be a variety of things, entirely depending on what weapons you want to run with this build. If you're running an Ikelos or 7th Seraph weapon, I'd suggest running Global Reach in your final piece so that you can generate Warmind cells. If you're running something like Sunshot, TQ's Divination, Jotun, or any other weapon that deals explosive damage like that, you could run another new Elemental Well mod, Explosive Well Maker, to generate an Elemental Well on rapid kills with explosive damage. Maybe you don't care about any of that and you just want to run something like Lucent Blade to buff the DPS of your sword. It's really entirely up to you what you want to do, though I'll personally be running Explosive Well Maker. For your normal mods, it's what you'd expect at this point. Finders and Scavengers if you have the mod capacity for them, whatever champion mods you need, an Elemental Resistant Concussive Dampener mod. The only thing of note is having Bomber and Distribution in your bond, which is why that needs to be solar. How it all comes together is that in, say, Override, you'll put down your Empowering Rift somewhere good, or on somebody else's Healing Rift if you see one, and just sit there, killing stuff. It's really not that complicated. I'd suggest getting a decent amount of grenade kills as well if possible so that you can spawn some Elemental Wells to give yourself that regen buff if you're not in a Healing Rift. As for the Well of Radiance itself, use it during the normal spots, versus big waves or big enemies. Make no mistake, these boots are a top tier pick for PvE in almost every situation, but what about PvP? Control, buffing any teammates near you for 20% increased damage will win them a fight a lot of the time, so checkmark for that. Iron Banner is the same deal, checkmark for that. Trials, Elim, and Comp, you can pop an Empowering Rift before challenging a lane with your teammates to give them the buff. It's really good. In terms of builds, there's nothing specific you need to run aside from maybe like a Bomber mod or two. You should already be running High Recovery, so that's not an issue. If you have no idea what to run for Charged with Light mods, Taking Charge, High Energy Fire, Radiant Light, and Powerful Friends are your bread and butter as always. So that's it? I think that's it. Boots of the Assembler are best used with Empowering Rifts in everything, really. And personally, I'm not taking them off unless there's literally nobody around me. S tier, top pick. I really can't praise these things enough. Get them ASAP. For now though, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like and leave a comment with your thoughts on these boots. If you want to know when I next release a video or go live, be sure to subscribe, join the Discord, and follow me on Twitter. For now though, I've been Scoobyfoo. I will see all you on Day 1 Vlog.